I have no training.
No?
I did not go to film school. I wound up teaching film school in San Francisco for many years while I started a Pixar program there with a guy named Warren Jacob, but I have no formal training. I started making films at a very young age, like 10, 11 years old. I always knew I wanted to be a director. And I made all kinds of movies, but I quickly realized that if I animated, I didn't have to rely on my friends to carry equipment around and show up on time. And so I started animating. And I always loved animation. I mean, I'm a huge fan. But out of high school, I got accepted to film school, but I was already working. So I did the first ever CG TV show called Reboot at a very young age. And I just stayed there for a couple of episodes, and then I got the opportunity to work on Toy Story. And I was pretty much self-taught. And I, of course, learned at Pixar. I learned, you know, it was like going to school for 9 years. So that's kind of what my education was. Well, it was an exciting time. I mean, it's one of my favorite CG movies, not because I worked on it, but just because it's such an incredible achievement. The software we used, I like to say it was like making a movie with tax software. You know, it was really very rudimentary, but the most advanced of its kind at the time. You know, it was really exciting. We didn't know what was going to happen. I actually remember the day before the movie came out, sitting with Pete Docter, the supervising animator in the animation department, and saying, "Do you think this is going to work? Do you think people are going to like this?" So, you know, you can imagine it worked. It really worked. But it was a special time. There was only about 100 people making that movie. And now, of course, in a movie like Horton, there's 375 people working on it. So there's a lot fewer people doing a lot more work back then, especially the technical guys. Well, I mean, you know, I think working on good movies as an animator, you learn about the story process because, you know, you're executing it. But I think being a filmmaker, you need to understand a lot of the different disciplines. One of the good things about working at a studio like Pixar in the early days was it's so much smaller, you learn so much more about all the other disciplines. When I worked at Reboot, on the show Reboot, I modeled myself, I did layout, I did lighting, I texture mapped stuff, and I didn't know anything about any of it. So I learned about all those different disciplines in the earlier days. And I think you need to have a grasp of all those things, but most importantly, you have to care about story. And, you know, as a filmmaker, you have to work with actors, you have to, you know, deal with the studio. It's a lot more like being a lawyer and a politician half the time than it is being a filmmaker. But I think it's like understanding all the disciplines. One of the things I learned when I was at Pixar was that at Pixar they allowed the talented people to be talented, and I think that you know, that a lot of the people in the crew have great ideas, and if you listen, you know, you'll wind up getting great material. Well, it's based off a famous children's book in America, Horton, Here's a Who by Dr. Seuss. But I think nobody had done a CG Dr. Seuss movie before, and I think a lot of the studios wanted to do it. And I think the Dr. Seuss estate was very reluctant to do any more movies. One of the things that we did was our executive producer, Chris Meledandri, brought the book to me and said, "What would you do with this book?" And it was my favorite book when I was a little kid, when I was small. I looked at it for hours and hours and hours. So Steve Martino and myself made a 30-second short film to show Dr. Seuss's widow how we'd visually treat Horton Here's a Who, and she loved what we did. And then we took the movie story elements that we created, and we took the original book, and we did new drawings, and we added those into the bound book, and we showed her a storybook of what the movie would be like. And I think that's how it kind of started. And they said yes to the movie, the studio greenlit it, and then we started the journey of making this massive project. I think in a movie like this, the personality of the actors greatly influences the characters. I mean, when we started with Jim Carrey, we had a really good idea of who we wanted Horton to be, and Jim had the same idea. And so we went to his house and pitched him the movie. He agreed to do it because we all felt the same way about the character. But on this movie, we worked with all great improvisational comedians. Steve Carell is, Carol Burnett is, you know, Seth Rogen. They are all great improvisational comedians. And as a result of that, it's a lot more of a collaborative process when you go into the studio. We don't just write a script and say, you have to say these lines. These people are often much funnier than we are. So you go in and you let them do great comedy. And I think that as a result of it, because we animate to the voice, as you know, they have an exceptional influence over how the characters turn out. These are like sort of big league actors, and they bring what they bring to the characters. I mean, they bring their great artistry to the characters.
Okay.
Well, it's changing in that there are so many schools. I don't know about in Spain, but in the United States, there are so many film schools. so many young animators and TDs are coming out all the time that, you know, it's what you need to be has evolved. It's almost like trying to be an actor now, be an animator. You know, it's funny how the need for different jobs in American CG right now, riggers, the people that put the bones in the characters, and you know, those people, and Eric Malvarez, one of our best riggers, is from Spain, will tell you the same thing. There's a need for those people. Animators, there's so many. Technical people, there's so many in the different disciplines, but I think for animators, you need to differentiate yourself from everybody else. You need to not just have the basic skills anymore. You need to be talented. And I think the most important thing is having good ideas. I think as a director, my favorite animators are the animators I go to and I say, this is my idea, and they make it better with their own, they add their own creative ideas to it. And those are the most sought after animators now, are the ones that really express their individual perspective, as well as have all the basic skills.